Can you imagine living under such oppression that getting around a heavily guarded concrete wall seems a viable goal? A 13-foot wall of rolled concrete may seem like an insurmountable obstacle, but for many in East Germany during the Cold War, it was the final obstacle to a life of freedom. It stretched for over 96 miles, although only 27 miles were in Berlin proper. The rest stretched along the border between East and West Germany, and the East German troops stationed along it made getting to and crossing the border extremely difficult with torn-up roads and barbed wire. Over 5,000 people managed to escape East Germany around the wall. They climbed it, dug under it, and even floated over it in makeshift balloons. Sadly, not everyone survived their escape attempts, but the almost 600 people who died remind us of the horrendous living conditions they suffered that made them desperate enough to attempt to cross the Berlin Wall. The Cold War left a lasting impression on the modern world as the Soviet Union and the United States fought over ideological differences. Although no official battles have been credited to the Cold War between the two world powers, the tension did spark other wars, such as the Vietnam War, and other antagonistic acts, such as building the Berlin Wall. Erected in 1961, the Berlin Wall quickly came to symbolize the Cold War, showing the difference between capitalism and communism and the tension the two world powers were causing across the globe. Although the Berlin Wall was built quickly, it was not made at the end of World War II when the Allies divided Germany. Instead, the lead-up to building the Berlin Wall took many years and influenced the progress of the Cold War. Modern history would be very different today if the Berlin Wall had never existed. So it is time to look back at why it was built, to see how competing ideologies can extend beyond politics and impact people's daily lives. Why did the Allies divide Germany after World War II? In many ways, World War II was a continuation of World War I because the Germans' resentment after losing the First World War helped fuel their aggression during the Second World War. In 1945, the Allies were left with the same question they faced in 1918. What should they do with Germany after the war? Luckily, the Allies had learned from the Treaty of Versailles and knew that economically punishing the Germans would only breed more resentment. However, the Allies were not only motivated by moral concerns, they were also worried about the Soviet Union. Despite promising the other Allies to hold open democratic elections in the countries they occupied, the Soviets quickly celebrated communist victories across Eastern Europe, except for Yugoslavia and Albania. The Soviet Union also ignored all diplomatic attempts to reinstate democracy. Politicians sympathetic to Western ideas, trying to return home to countries like Poland, Romania, and Hungary, were either refused entry or disappeared. The Allies knew they could not sway the Soviet Union without warfare. Still, they were hesitant to leave the Soviet Union unchecked, especially with their plans to export their communist ideology. The original plan to re-establish Germany as a neutral country quickly fell through, and the Allies split Germany into 4 areas. It was divided between the United States, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union, and the capital Berlin was also divided amongst these 4 countries. This division lasted from 1945 until 1949, when tensions between the Soviet Union and the other Allied powers reached a breaking point. The immediate differences between Eastern and Western Germany fueled this tension. Western Germany quickly began rebuilding with the help of British and American soldiers. The same cannot be said for Eastern Germany under communism. When the Allied forces decided to unite Western Germany into one group to strengthen economic prosperity, the Soviet Union withdrew from the Allied Control Council. The remaining Allies further aggravated Stalin by creating a new Deutschmark to replace the old German currency. In retaliation, on June 24, 1948, Stalin blocked all Allied access to Berlin, trying to force the Allies to either leave Berlin to the Soviet Union or at least enter into negotiations where Stalin could set the terms, leading to more control over Germany. He had thought the United States and Britain would soon pull out of West Germany, leaving it defenseless against the Soviet Union's advances. Thus, Stalin had planned to reunite Germany under communism. Sadly, by blocking access to Berlin, Stalin ensured the United States would remain active in West Germany. Stalin ordered all roads, railways, and waterways from Western Germany into Berlin to be blocked, and the Soviet army was to fire on anyone who attempted to break through. Historians call this incident the Berlin Blockade. It was the first international crisis of the Cold War. The United States refused to give up on Berlin without a fight. In response, they launched the Berlin Airlift 2 days later to bring all the necessary supplies for Western Berlin. At first, the Soviet Union didn't believe it was possible. Even the Allies had doubts about bringing in 4,500 tons of fuel and food daily to keep Western Berlin alive. However, they quickly exceeded that amount, and at the peak of the Berlin Airlift, an airplane landed in Berlin every 30 seconds. Western Berlin didn't just survive the Soviet Union's blockade with the help of the United States and Britain, the city thrived, increasing German regard for the two Allied countries. Some pilots even dropped candy to waiting children, increasing goodwill and showing the Allies were strong enough to bring treats alongside necessities. The Berlin Airlift was a disaster for the Soviet Union, especially as it struggled with starvation across the realm and economic issues in East Berlin. They continued to pressure Western German politicians, so Western Germany announced on May 23, 1949, that they were forming a new country called the Federal Republic of Germany. In October of the same year, the Soviet Union started the German Democratic Republic in Eastern Germany. Even though Berlin was located entirely in the German Democratic Republic, it was also split between the East and the West, with the Federal Republic of Germany controlling the western half of the city. The division of Germany appeared to be permanent, but even forming new countries did not resolve the tension between the United States and the Soviet Union as the Cold War blossomed on the international stage. Why did they build the Berlin Wall? During the 1950s and 1960s, Western Germans underwent a cultural and economic revival historians call the German economic miracle. A significant portion of West Germany's recovery can be credited to the Marshall Plan, also called the European Recovery Plan. Lasting from April 1948 to December 1951, the Marshall Plan was the United States' attempt to restabilize Europe after World War II. It feared communism would be more popular in struggling countries. Americans were already concerned about communism spreading into Western Europe, setting the stage for the Cold War. At first, the Marshall Plan offered assistance to almost all European countries, usually through grants and loans. But the Soviet Union soon withdrew, taking much of Eastern Europe with them. Thus, Western Europe was the principal benefactor, including West Germany. The United States focused on rebuilding industries like steel, chemical, and engineering, and agriculture, increasing trade and economic stability. Overall, the Marshall Plan was a success. By the early 1960s, West Germany had a strong enough economy to rival France. Men were the traditional workers in the family, holding jobs that provided home with fridges, appliances, and televisions for their families. Most people experienced an increase in their standard of living, which allowed them to care for their families better and make solid investments in public services like hospitals, schools, and museums. Of course, the country also grew politically by joining NATO and culturally, celebrating freedom of expression unknown since before the Nazi era. They experienced a rebirth of literature, music, art, and film, allowing people to celebrate their creativity once again. Sadly, life in East Germany did not improve, and the people suffered economically, politically, and culturally. Any deviation from the Communist Party's standards was punishable, and the secret police, called the Stasi, watched the citizens closely. The Communist Party in East Germany began pushing for increased socialism, stressing the importance of high production in various industries. As the Soviet Union struggled to rebuild the economy after the war, every single worker was needed, even women. However, the people were not free to live how they wanted. The churches came under extensive pressure, and despite the economic and social planning, many young people were not satisfied in East Germany. They had grown up during World War II and were ready to explore all life had to offer. The people in East Germany saw how different life was in West Germany and fled. Between 1945 and 1961, around 4 million people defected to West Germany. The youth, in particular, left East Germany in droves in search of freedom and opportunities. In 1961, about half of the people who emigrated were under 25 years old. The people in Berlin clearly saw the difference between the two sides, and until 1961, East Berliners could easily cross into West Berlin. The Soviet Union needed to stop the mass exodus to maintain a workforce for industrial output and increase collective farming. So they pressured the German Democratic Republic into building the Berlin Wall to separate Eastern and Western Berlin. The first Berlin Wall was made of cinder blocks and topped with barbed wire. It wasn't very effective, and people continued to escape. Some even jumped off buildings to clear the wall and land in West Germany, breaking their legs. The East German authorities continued strengthening the barrier, breaking up the windows in the buildings near the border and rebuilding the wall with smooth cement. They surrounded the wall with deterrents like security checkpoints, minefields, and guard dogs. In the end, the Berlin Wall was an imposing force that didn't only divide Berlin, it also divided the central West and East German border, stretching for hundreds of miles. The Berlin Wall stood for over 30 years. Thankfully, as the Soviet Union collapsed, its hold on East Germany also faded. The economy had been struggling for decades, and the people began demanding more freedom and open communication from the government. The East German government soon caved under protests and social changes. Society quickly changed, and the Berlin Wall finally came down on November 9, 1989. This historic day soon signaled the reuniting of Germany. The war between the ideologies had ended, and people were free again to choose how to live their lives. Although the tension that led to the Berlin Wall has not been resolved, the Berlin Wall still reminds us of the pain that forcing people to live according to one ideology can bring. The Berlin Wall was a physical representation of the international division during the Cold War, and with its fall, the world was once again free to attempt to find cohesion once again. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about the Berlin Wall, check out our book, History of Germany, a captivating guide to German history starting from 1871 through the First World War, Weimar Republic, and World War II to the present. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.